In my previous life, I died in a cold laboratory, the stench of disinfectant piercing my nostrils, sharp needles piercing my veins again and again, and I could clearly feel my vitality draining away, drop by drop, with my blood. Those people in white coats looked at me with fanatical eyes, appraising me as if I were a rare treasure, muttering about a perfect antibody and the ultimate experimental subject. And the mastermind behind all of this was the family I had treated with wholehearted devotion for 10 years. Welcome to Panda's Storyboard. Put on your headphones, get cozy, and settle in. Let's enjoy this story together. If you like it, don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like. Now, let's begin. After my parents died in a car accident, they left behind a fully paid villa and a sizable inheritance, under the pretense of taking care of me. My Uncle Andrew's family moved into my home, naturally taking over all the property and taking over my life as well. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, every bit of housework fell on my shoulders. My Aunt Nancy always said that girls had to be hardworking to be loved. Yet, she spoiled her own son Alex to the bone. Alex lounged on the sofa, playing games all day, reaching out when he needed clothes and opening his mouth when he wanted food, while Nancy carefully served him food, afraid of disturbing her precious son. I once believed that if I were obedient enough and pleasing enough, I could earn a shred of familial affection. On the day the zombie virus broke out, the city descended into chaos. I risked my life, going out to search for supplies, just so they could stay safe at home. During one search, I was scratched on the arm by a zombie, and foul, briny fluid seeped into my skin along the wound.
I thought I was doomed, but after waiting an entire night, not only did I not mutate, the wound even began to heal slowly. Ecstatic, I ran home to tell them the news. But not long after, under the excuse of seeking protection, they tricked me into a hidden research facility. The moment the cold iron door closed, I finally understood. I was nothing more than a bargaining chip for their comfortable life. Life in the laboratory was endless torment. Yet, I saw Nancy and Andrew taking Alex into the safety vehicles provided by the Institute. Until the moment my consciousness completely dissipated, I had only one thought. If there were a next life, I would make them repay their blood debt in full. Mindy, go downstairs to the convenience store and buy a bag of white sugar. Mom wants to make braised pork. That familiar grating voice rang in my ears, carrying its habitual tone of command. I snapped my eyes open, and what met my gaze was the familiar ceiling. Sunlight spilled onto the floor through the gap in the curtains, the air filled with the smell of oil smoke from Nancy's cooking. Downstairs came Alex's angry shouts as he played games, mixed with Nancy's gentle coaxing. Wow, I was reborn. I lowered my head and looked at my hands, slender and fair, free of the grotesque needle marks and scars from the laboratory. My phone screen was lit, the date showing the day before the zombie virus outbreak. My heart pounded violently, not from joy, but from overwhelming hatred. Those painful memories surged back like a tide. The cold of the laboratory, the weakness from blood loss, the betrayal of family, each seemed vivid as if it had happened yesterday. I clenched my fists. This time, I would no longer be that fool who craved family affection, nor would I give everything for people who were not worth it. Nancy, Andrew, Alex, you owe me, and I will collect it bit by bit, principal and interest together. What are you standing there for? Did you hear me? Nancy's voice came again, tinged with impatience. I took a deep breath, suppressed the gloom in my eyes, and replied calmly, "Got it. I'll grab something and go." Turning back to my room, I quickly opened the wardrobe. This room had been prepared for me by my parents when they were alive, full of sunlight and my favorite dolls. But ever since my uncle's family moved in, it had become a storage room. Their miscellaneous items were piled in the corners, my belongings squeezed into a tiny space. I had no time for sentimentality. I dragged out an old suitcase from under the bed, filled with my parents' photos and important documents. I carefully put the photos into my backpack, then took out a bank card hidden in a compartment on the bookshelf. This was a wealth management account my parents had set up for me, depositing monthly earnings after I turned 18, and it now held over 200,000 yuan. My uncle's family knew nothing about it. They only knew how to squander the cash and property my parents had left behind.
After packing up, I slung on my backpack and didn't look back at that so-called home again. As I walked out, Nancy was busy in the kitchen. Alex was sprawled on the sofa gaming, and Andrew was studying stocks with his reading glasses on. No one looked up at me, as if my existence meant nothing to them. Fine, that made it easier. Stepping out of the villa, warm sunlight bathed me, yet it couldn't dispel the chill in my heart. I glanced back, the corners of my mouth curling into a cold smile. The zombie virus would erupt tonight, and this 3-story villa, with no defenses and no tall buildings nearby, was destined to be one of the first targets. I wanted to see just how long they could survive in this apocalypse without me searching for supplies, without my antibody as protection. I didn't go to the convenience store for sugar, but instead took a taxi straight to an upscale residential area downtown. From my memories of my previous life, zombies were slow and bad at climbing in the early stages, making high-rise buildings relatively safer. I needed a place with a wide view and solid defenses as my early-stage refuge. Through a real estate agent, I quickly found a top-floor apartment on the 30th floor, one elevator for 2 households, fully furnished and well-equipped, with daily rental amenities like bedding already prepared. I didn't bargain and paid 6 months' rent up front, the agent grinning as he handed me the keys. The first thing I did was reinforce the front door. I contacted nearby renovation workers, paid double, and had them immediately install a steel-reinforced security door, tough enough that without heavy weapons, it would be nearly impossible to break. Even if appliances couldn't be prepared in time, this door alone could buy me precious reaction time. Once the door was secured, I opened a food delivery app and began hoarding supplies like crazy. Rice, noodles, vegetables, meat, short-term food in massive quantities, along with canned goods, instant noodles, compressed biscuits, and dehydrated vegetables for long-term storage. I ordered dozens of boxes, noting that everything should be left at the door. Water was essential for survival, so I bought dozens of cases of bottled water and several large storage barrels, planning to store as much tap water as possible once everything arrived. After that, I headed to the mall, buying durable outdoor clothing and sports shoes, along with 2 extra-large suitcases for scattered supplies. At the hardware store, I swept up lighters, flashlights, binoculars, axes, and entrenching tools, piling them into a small mountain. Just as I was about to pay, I noticed a crossbow in the corner. In my past life, I had relied on makeshift weapons countless times, fully aware of the value of ranged combat. And this crossbow was powerful, its arrows sharp enough to blow a zombie's head apart. I grabbed it immediately, along with several bundles of bolts. The middle-aged shop owner, seeing how much I bought, pulled me aside and showed me a tang saber with a long, narrow blade glowing faintly blue, boasting that it could cut through iron like mud. I bargained hard, eventually sealing the deal at $80,000. The moment I gripped the hilt, its cold touch steadied my heart. I refused delivery, hired a cargo van instead, and carefully guarded the saber all the way home. By the time I returned, the hallway was piled with deliveries, and it took me 2 full hours to haul everything inside. Food, water, and tools filled every corner of the apartment. Just as I carried in the last case of water, the elevator across the hall stopped, revealing a tall man in black tactical gear, sharp-eyed, leading a vigilant German shepherd, his carts stacked with even more supplies than mine. Our eyes met briefly. He nodded, and I locked my door. Through the peephole, I watched him move supplies back and forth, clearly another person who knew what was coming. In my previous life, I learned too late that the zombie virus wasn't natural, but deliberately released for human experimentation and culling, and that I was an unexpected antibody carrier. This time, I would live and protect myself. I blocked Nancy's number, ate simply, charged my devices, exercised until my body ached, and finally lay down as news of violent incidents flooded the screen. They still thought help would come. They didn't know the world was about to fall apart. I closed my eyes, memories branded into my bones, vowing never to repeat the same fate. Some time later, I drifted into deep sleep as the sky outside darkened and an eerie blood-red glow spread across the horizon. Red, as if the world had been soaked in fresh blood. A piercing howl tore through the night sky. The zombie virus erupted right on schedule. I jolted awake at the sound, sprang out of bed, and walked straight to the floor-to-ceiling window. Down on the street below, chaos had already taken over. Some people were running for their lives, some were collapsed on the ground struggling, and others, eyes vacant, movements stiff, were chasing the living, saliva dripping from the corners of their mouths. They were zombies, unmistakably so. Screams, sobs, and the crash of colliding cars overlapped, weaving together a vision of hell on earth. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Then I went to the door and peered outside through the peephole. The corridor was quiet, with no sign of zombies for the moment. I locked the door, shoved the sofa against it, and set up double layers of protection. For the next month, my life settled into a rigid, monotonous routine. Every day, aside from eating and sleeping, I spent all my remaining time training, running, lifting dumbbells, practicing with a blade and a crossbow. Experience from my previous life spared me countless detours. The results of my training came twice as fast with half the effort. Gradually, my body began to change. My limbs were still slender, but the lines had grown tight and powerful. When I moved, my muscles stood out clearly, and both my explosive strength and endurance had improved significantly. I was confident that, as I was now, I could take down an ordinary zombie with a single strike to the head. During that time, I occasionally watched the neighbor across the hall through the peephole. He seemed just like me, staying inside, never coming out. No sound, no movement, as if he didn't exist at all. But I knew he was preparing in silence as well. After all, the supplies he had stockpiled were enough to last him a long time. Over that month, zombie howls and human cries for help would sometimes echo through the corridor. But I never opened the door. In the apocalypse, the most terrifying thing isn't zombies, it's the human heart. When survival is on the line, many people abandon morality and conscience, stopping at nothing to stay alive. The lessons of my past life told me one thing clearly: trust no one. Compassion only becomes a fatal weakness. A month later, my body felt like it had reached its peak condition. My supplies were still sufficient, but I knew I couldn't stay here forever. Human bases should be forming soon, and leaving now would let me catch the first wave of settlers. Just as I was packing my bag and preparing to leave, a woman's sobbing voice came from outside the door, accompanied by frantic knocking. "Please, open the door and save me and my daughter." Her voice was thick with despair. "My husband has gone mad. He wants to trade my daughter for food. Please, take us in. Even if you only take my daughter, that's fine. I'll kneel to you." Dull, heavy thuds echoed as she kowtowed. I frowned, alarm bells ringing in my head. The apocalypse had only begun a month ago, and already someone was willing to sell their own child to survive. Something felt deeply wrong. I stayed silent and went to the door, looking out through the peephole. Outside stood a woman so thin she was almost skin and bones, holding a little girl in her arms. Her hair was a mess, her face streaked with tears, pitiful to the extreme. The little girl in her arms stared blankly ahead, her face pale as paper, not saying a word. But I noticed that although the woman's eyes looked desperate, they kept flicking toward the stairwell. And though her kowtows sounded loud, their rhythm was steady, nothing like someone truly driven to desperation. I shifted my gaze toward the stairs and caught a glimpse of a shadow flashing past. So it was a trap. The woman was bait, meant to play on my sympathy and lure me into opening the door, while the people lying in ambush would rush in. I sneered inwardly. Since they had come knocking themselves, I had no reason to be merciful. Perfect kill one to warn 100. And let anyone eyeing me know I was not to be messed with. I put on my protective gear, slung on my backpack, and took up my blade and crossbow, fully prepared for a fight. Just as I was about to open the door beside mine suddenly swung open. A dark shape shot out like lightning. It was the black-backed dog from the neighbor's place. Like a streak of black thunder, it lunged toward the stairwell. A man's scream followed immediately. I froze for a moment, as a man clutching his arms staggered out from the stairwell, a deep gash in his flesh, blood pouring out. He held an iron rod, trying to fight back, but the blackback had its teeth locked on him, refusing to let go. "General, back!" A low voice rang out. The dog instantly released its grip, and sprinted back to its owner, standing obediently behind him, eyes still fixed warily on the injured man. The neighbor stepped out, still dressed in a black tactical jacket, a curved blade in his hand. The blade gleamed coldly, clearly no ordinary weapon. From the shadows at the stairwell, 2 more burly men emerged, weapons in hand, staring at us with vicious eyes, especially when they looked at the dog, greed flashing unmistakably in their gaze. In the apocalypse, a healthy dog wasn't just for guarding a home. At critical moments, it could even become food. The woman holding the child immediately shrank aside, trembling, putting on a look of extreme fright. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" the neighbor asked, his voice icy, devoid of warmth. We're just looking for a place to take shelter," one of the men said, trying to sound tough, his eyes darting between the neighbor and me, before finally settling on me, a lewd glint flashing through them. "Why don't you come with us, pretty lady? We've got food and weapons. We'll make sure you eat and drink well." As he spoke, he swaggered toward me, his gaze roaming over my body, without restraint. I tightened my grip on the blade, killing intent flashing in my eyes, just about to strike. But the neighbor was faster. His speed was terrifying, like a phantom blur. In an instant, he was in front of the man, his curved blade flashing. With a wet, slicing sound, the man was struck in the shoulder before he could even react, blood spraying everywhere. He screamed and collapsed to the ground. The other 2 men rushed forward at once, weapons raised. The neighbor remained calm, his blade dancing up and down with lethal precision, every strike aimed straight at vital points. The blackback worked seamlessly with him, lunging in to bite and pin one of the men, disrupting his movements. I stopped hesitating and charged in with my blade. Trash like this deserved no mercy. I targeted one man's back and brought the blade down hard, cleaving straight into his spine. He let out a muffled groan and crumpled to the ground, never getting back up. Seeing his companions fall one by one, the last man was terrified out of his wits. He turned and ran. I wasn't about to let him escape. I grabbed my crossbow, knocked an arrow aimed at his back, and gently pulled the trigger. The arrow sliced through the air and struck precisely behind his knee. He screamed and tumbled down the stairs. In just a few minutes, the 3 men were dealt with. The woman holding the child went deathly pale, staring at us in sheer terror as she tried to slip away quietly. "Stop," I called out. Her body stiffened as she slowly turned around, forcing a smile uglier than crying. I was forced. I didn't mean it." I ignored her excuses and looked at her coldly. "If I ever see you using this kind of trick to harm people again, you'll bear the consequences yourself." As if pardoned, the woman clutched the child and fled down the stairs in a panic. The corridor fell silent again, leaving only the smell of blood and a faint trace of disinfectant. I turned to the neighbor and sincerely thanked him. If he hadn't acted in time, I could have handled it too, but not without extra trouble. No need. We live on the same floor. If one falls, the other won't survive either. If they'd succeeded this time, I would have been next. He was right. In the apocalypse, no one can stand alone. "My name is Luke," he said, extending his hand, his gaze open and honest. I shook his hand. His palm was broad and warm, with a thin layer of calluses. Just then, zombie howls rose from downstairs. The blood and noise of the fight had drawn more and more of them upward. "Let's go back inside," Luke said. "It's not safe here." I nodded, and we returned to our respective apartments. Back in my room, I leaned against the door, steadying my breath. The fight had been brief, but it gave me a clear sense of Luke's strength. His skills were sharp, his reactions fast, and his awareness of danger keen. Someone like that was a rare, reliable companion in the apocalypse. I took out my phone and sent him a friend request. He accepted almost immediately. "I'm planning to head to the human base soon. Do you know where it is?" "Yes," he replied quickly. "I did some research earlier. It's in the military-restricted zone on the outskirts of the city. It should be mostly completed by now. Let's go together. It'll be safer on the road." "All right." Then we leave in 2 days. I still have some things to take care of. 2 days from now, 8 in the morning, underground garage. No problem. Over the next 2 days, I sorted through my gear, taking only the essentials: food, water, common medicine, weapons, and photos of my parents. The rest of the supplies were hard to part with, but if I couldn't carry them, they had to be left behind. 2 days later, I arrived at the underground garage with my backpack and blade. Luke was already there. Beside him, the blackback general had 2 bulging supply packs strapped to his back. Luke had brought a black G-Class SUV, its trunk packed full of fuel cans. Clearly well prepared. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded. Ready. We loaded our gear into the trunk and got into the car. General curled up obediently in the back seat, eyes alert as he watched our surroundings. A few scattered zombies lurked in the garage, and the moment they heard the engine start, they howled and rushed over. Luke didn't hesitate, slamming on the gas. The car shot forward like an arrow, plowing straight through the zombies blocking the way. As the scenery outside the window flew past, emotions churned in my chest. In my previous life, I had risked my life again and again on this very road, scavenging for supplies. This time, I was finally taking the initiative, moving forward in search of new hope. The car sped out of the residential area. Outside, zombies were everywhere, wandering aimlessly, then charging madly at the sight of the vehicle. But we were too fast, leaving them far behind. For the next 2 days, we took turns driving, pushing forward day and night toward the human base. Luke's driving was excellent, weaving smoothly through debris-strewn roads. General was well-behaved, letting out only low warning growls when zombies appeared. Otherwise, staying quiet. Along the way, we encountered other survivors. Some begged us for help, others tried to rob us. To those who pleaded, we could only turn a blind eye, not out of cruelty, but because in the apocalypse, we simply didn't have the capacity to save everyone. Just staying alive consumed all our strength. As for those with ill intentions, we showed no mercy, dealing with them swiftly to avoid future trouble. 2 days later, we passed a remote village. Continuous driving had exhausted us both physically and mentally, so we decided to find a safe place to rest. We parked at the village entrance and cautiously made our way inside. The village was quiet, with only occasional zombie howls drifting through the air. We found an empty house that looked relatively sturdy, cleared out the few zombies inside, and planned to rest there. While I was clearing zombies from the yard, I heard faint cries for help nearby. Following the sound, I saw several zombies surrounding a dilapidated wooden shack, clawing frantically at the door. The door was already gnawed to pieces and could collapse at any moment. Without thinking, I gripped my blade and rushed in. The blade was razor sharp, 1 strike per zombie. In no time, they were all down. The zombies are dead. You can come out now, I called to the door. After a long while, the door slowly cracked open. A small head peeked out, a little girl of 7 or 8, dressed in tattered clothes, so thin she was little more than bones. Her eyes were filled with fear and caution. She studied me carefully, and only after confirming there was no danger did she step out and bow deeply. "Thank you, big sister," she said softly, her voice trembling. Looking at her pale face and frail body, my heart softened. I had known that same despair and helplessness in my past life. I took a compressed biscuit from my pack and handed it to her. She took it, clutching it tightly, but didn't eat. At that moment, Luke arrived with General after clearing the area. When the girl saw the dog, her eyes lit up, filled with curiosity and disbelief. In a world overrun by zombies, living animals were rarer than living people. "Go on, eat. You must be starving," I said gently. She shook her head and whispered, "I need to save it for my aunt. My mom and dad both turned into zombies. My aunt hid here with me. If I don't bring food back, I'll be sold to the laboratory in exchange for food." Laboratory. My heart jolted, and the painful memories of my previous life surged back like a tidal wave. Luke frowned as well, the way he looked at the little girl growing noticeably more grave. He asked her what the laboratory was like. I forced down the turmoil in my chest and asked softly. The little girl spoke timidly. She said she didn't know exactly what it looked like, only that the adults in the village said if you went to that laboratory and cooperated with their experiments, you would be given food. Many uncles, aunts, older brothers and sisters had gone, but none of them ever came back. Her aunt told her that if she didn't go, they would all starve to death. Luke and I exchanged a look. Both of us seemed shock and fury in each other's eyes. We hadn't expected the laboratory's claws to reach so fast, so far, sparing not even such a remote village. I took out a piece of bread and a bottle of water from my backpack and handed them to the little girl, telling her to eat first and to take the compressed biscuits with her. I told her to listen to her aunt and not go to that laboratory because it was very dangerous. She took the bread and water and devoured them, clearly starving. After she finished, she bowed to me again and thanked me, calling me big sister. I asked where her home was and offered to walk her back, She shook her head and said she could go back by herself, that her aunt had told her not to trust strangers casually. With that, she clutched the biscuits and ran off into the depths of the village. Watching her thin, small figure disappear, my emotions tangled into something indescribable. In the apocalypse, even children had learned caution and self-defense. This laboratory was clearly no ordinary threat. "We can't let our guard down," Luke said. I nodded. After a moment of silence, he suggested that we head to the human base as soon as possible, report what we'd seen, and let them send people to investigate. With just the two of us, it would be nearly impossible to shake a laboratory like this. I knew he was right. Acting rashly wouldn't save anyone, and would only get us killed. But the thought of people being dragged into laboratories and tortured, just as I had been in my last life, made my heart ache, like it was being cut open. "Wait a little longer," I said. "We could track them first, find the laboratory's exact location, and maybe uncover some useful clues." Luke thought it over and nodded, agreeing, but he stressed that we had to be extremely careful and not alert the enemy. After resting for the night, we began gathering information around the village early the next morning. From several survivors hiding in mountain caves, we learned that laboratory vehicles came regularly to recruit test subjects, taking several people each time and leaving some food behind. The most recent visit had been just yesterday. Following the direction the survivors gave us, we drove the Big G quietly after them. At first, there were still scattered zombies along the road, but after driving for a while, there were fewer and fewer, until eventually there were none at all. The grass on both sides of the road had been cleared clean, clearly maintained deliberately. After about another hour, a hidden research base appeared before us. It was built in a valley, surrounded by tall walls topped with barbed wire. Armed guards stood watch at the tightly closed gate. The moment I saw the base, my blood seemed to freeze. Though the exterior had changed somewhat, I recognized it instantly. This was the same laboratory that had tortured me to death in my previous life. I clenched my fists so hard, my nails dug into my palms, using the pain to keep myself lucid. The hatred from my past life burned like fire in my chest. We parked the car in the distant woods and observed the base through binoculars. White-coated staff moved in and out, while armed guards patrolled constantly. "Let's leave first and go to the human base," Luke said softly, sensing my agitation. "Now isn't the time for revenge." I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. He was right. Seeking revenge now would be like smashing a rock with an egg. I had to endure, to wait until I had enough strength to make them pay in blood. Just as we were about to drive away, a burst of dense zombie howls echoed through the air, louder and more concentrated than anything we had heard before. "There shouldn't be zombies around here. How could there be such a commotion?" I said, puzzled. Luke frowned as well, and said we should take a look. We left the general in the car, and cautiously headed toward the sound. After walking a few hundred meters, we saw an even taller, sturdier wall than the one around the research base. Inside was a massive open area, spanning several thousand square meters, packed densely with zombies, at least tens of thousands of them. They roared, shoved one another, and roamed restlessly, the scene terrifying beyond words. Around the open ground were several pitch-black cave entrances. Suddenly, a thunderous rumble erupted, and human corpses poured out of the caves in an endless stream. The zombies instantly went berserk, lunging forward to fight over the flesh. The scene was bloody and brutal. I couldn't take it anymore. I dropped to the ground and vomited violently, my stomach churning. The horrors I had witnessed in the laboratory in my last life overlapped with what I was seeing now, pushing me to the brink of collapse. Luke said nothing, simply patting my back to help me steady my breathing. His eyes had gone ice cold, brimming with murderous intent. After a long while, I finally recovered and said hoarsely that these people were far too cruel. They were actually raising zombies. Luke nodded, saying this breeding ground was likely connected to the research base. They were feeding zombies with human corpses, probably conducting some kind of experiment. I stood up, my gaze hardening with resolve. I said I was going in to open the passage and let the zombies take revenge on those people. Luke looked at me, his expression complicated, and asked if I understood how dangerous that was. The base was heavily guarded, filled with zombies. If anything went wrong, we would die there. "I know," I said, "but I can't just watch them continue their atrocities. I was a victim in my last life, In this one, I won't let more people suffer the same fate. Every day we delay means more people dragged into the laboratory, turned into test subjects, turned into food. After a moment of silence, Luke's eyes softened with sincerity. He said he supported me and that we would do it together. When I tried to stop him, he cut me off, saying we were teammates and that he had his own reasons. He told me about a long dream he once had. In it, he was also a survivor of the apocalypse. His family were all police officers. His grandfather and father had both died in the line of duty. After the outbreak, he joined a rescue squad at the human base. On one mission, they rescued a group of survivors, whom he brought back and cared for carefully. But those people betrayed him to survive, colluding with the laboratory. They captured him and his teammates and turned them into test subjects. The general was killed trying to protect them and fed to others. In the laboratory, he saw a girl whose body had been dissected beyond recognition, leaving only her head. From the lab records, he learned she was an antibody carrier who had suffered endless torment. He wanted to take her head back for burial, but before he could, a zombie riot broke out. The traitors locked him and his teammates inside the lab, leaving them to be devoured. His voice trembled slightly as he said he had lost too much in that dream. In this life, having met me, he didn't want the tragedy to repeat. He hoped I could have a different ending. I burst into tears. It turned out he had endured the same pain. We were both cast aside by fate, yet reunited after rebirth. I thanked him softly. He shook his head and said there was no need. We would make those villains pay together. Over the next 2 days, we devised a detailed plan. We observed guard shift times, located the ventilation ducts, and prepared enough explosives. I would infiltrate the base, open the zombie enclosures, and release the captive test subjects. Luke would provide support from outside, and once I succeeded, he would detonate the explosives to destroy the exit, trapping everyone inside. When everything was ready, I put on a uniform taken from a dead staff member, donned a mask and hat, and slipped into the base during a shift change. Inside, security was even tighter than I'd expected, with guards patrolling the corridors at regular intervals. I moved cautiously, avoiding them, and heading for the control room. A guard stopped me and demanded to know what I was doing. My heart clenched, but I stayed calm and said the supervisor had sent me to inform the control room staff about a dinner gathering that evening. After sizing me up, the guard nodded and let me pass. In the control room, 2 staff members were monitoring the screens. I delivered the message as planned, and one of them left, leaving only one behind. Taking advantage of the moment, I struck him hard on the back of the head with a metal rod. He collapsed with a muffled groan. I quickly operated the computer, found the switch controlling the zombie enclosures, and pressed it. At that instant, I heard a distant rumble. The passage had opened. I then locked the main gate, destroyed the control systems and circuits, rendering the base completely inoperable. Grabbing my Tang saber, I ran toward the area where the test subjects were held. The rooms were sealed with thick iron doors. I hacked them open with an axe, and released the captives one by one, shouting for them to follow me quickly, before it was too late. That was when I saw a familiar figure curled up in a corner, cheeks sunken, eyes dull. It was Alex. He saw me too, surprise flashing in his eyes before turning into entitlement. He demanded that I take him out, and asked about his parents, still acting as if I owed him everything. Hatred surged within me. Nancy and Andrew were likely already dead or captured. Otherwise, Alex wouldn't have ended up like this. I ignored him and continued freeing others. He shouted after me, even reaching out to grab me. I shot him a cold look and told him to follow if he wanted to live. No one was going to serve him. Chaos had erupted in the base. Zombies flooded in, attacking staff and guards alike. Blood filled the air, driving the zombies into a frenzy. The freed test subjects behind me trembled in terror. Some collapsed and were overtaken and devoured. I didn't look back. In the apocalypse, everyone was responsible for their own survival. All I could do was give them a chance to run. We sprinted toward the exit, passing guards and staff firing wildly. Many test subjects were shot and fell, becoming zombie food. I saw several white-coated figures, people who had tortured me in my last life, fleeing in panic. I charged forward, cutting them down one by one, a grim sense of vengeance surging through me. Suddenly, Alex rushed to my side, grabbed my arm and shouted to a nearby sniper that I was the one who opened the passage. The sniper immediately turned his gun on me. Reacting instantly, I shoved Alex in front of me. Bullets tore into his body. He stared wide-eyed in disbelief, as if he never understood why he was the one to die. I ran for the exit. Luke was ready outside. The moment I emerged, he detonated the explosives. A thunderous blast sealed the exit completely, trapping the zombies and any survivors inside. I collapsed to the ground, utterly drained. Only a dozen or so test subjects had made it out. Ragged and terrified, yet alive. Luke rushed over and pulled me into his arms, telling me I had done it. Leaning against him, tears streamed down my face, this time tears of joy, tears of release. 2 years later, the human survivors base had already taken shape, with a complete defensive system and fully functioning living facilities established within it. With the help of my blood samples, the researchers successfully developed a zombie vaccine, and its emergence completely reshaped the order of the post-apocalyptic world. No one would ever be infected and turn into a zombie again, and humanity finally saw hope. Luke and I walked hand in hand along the streets of the rebuilt city, sunlight warm, a gentle breeze brushing past us. Scattered shops and pedestrians had begun to appear on both sides of the road, while children laughed and played along the sidewalks, their faces glowing with pure, innocent smiles. How wonderful, I sighed. In my previous life, I never once imagined that I would be able to witness such an age of peace and prosperity again. Luke tightened his grip on my hand and said softly, "Yes, it's all over now. From here on, things will only get better." I looked up at him, and his gaze was gentle, yet resolute. In my past life, I endured betrayal and despair, dying alone in a cold laboratory. In this life, reborn and returned, I met Luke, avenged my blood-soaked hatred, and bore witness to the rebirth of humanity.